Hey geographers, and welcome to another video of Concepts Explained. Finals are steadily approaching and we know a thing or two about them. So in order to help you guys out, today we are going to cover the demographic transition model and the epidemiological transition model. And in doing so, answering the question, how does the DTM and ETM help geographers measure the level of development for a country? If you want to do good, you better stick around. Let's dive in. The demographic transition model, created by American demographer Warren Thompson in 1929, is often defined as the stages all countries must pass through as they reach full development. Currently, there are 4 defined stages to this model that use different demographic factors to measure the level of development in a country. Some even argue the existence of a 5th stage. And so you get a better understanding of the way the model works, now let's introduce the demographic accounting equation. The demographic accounting equation looks at the contributions of different demographic processes to the population change of an area during a specific time period. There are 2 factors: natural change, the difference between births and deaths, and net migration, the difference between immigration and emigration. And 2 key terminologies you're going to want to be familiar with are crude birth rate and crude death rate, or you might hear them be called CBR and CDR, are the live number of births or live number of deaths divided by every 1,000 people within a population. And when you find the difference between the two and divide it by 1,000, the total population's natural increase rate, or NIR, is generated, all making up what stage you are in the demographic transition model.
As aforementioned, there are 4 and sometimes 5 stages of DTM, the first of which is where the CBR and CDR are both very high in fluctuation, causing the NIR that is not very consistent or even actually high. This stage was and is known as overall low growth stage, explained by the time of hunter-gatherer societies where there was little to no access to healthcare for issues caused by living out in dangerous undeveloped land all over the world. Currently, there are no countries of the whole population that are in this stage of development. However, there are still small communities that exist in this state of development, left untouched by civilizations. The graph corresponding to this stage can be shown with a large base representing a large birth rate, coming to a sharp point to represent the rare number of people that live to old ages. Next is a second stage that represents the country with rapidly decreasing death rates and continually high birth rates, with an overall high natural increase. This stage is known as high growth stage because the number of births and immigrants largely outweighs the number of death rates in a country. This drastic decrease is a staple of a society delving into the beginnings of development as they go forward with greater technologies in healthcare. When you look at the world's countries, there are a few lesser developed countries that reside in this stage, like Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bolivia, some sub-Saharan African countries like Niger and Uganda, as well as Middle Eastern, Yemen, and Palestinian territories. The stage following the second is of course the third, where the death rate retains a steady decrease and finally the birth rate begins on its downward crawl. Though, the birth rate still outweighs the death, making the natural increase rate preserve a moderate growth. In this stage, the effects of increasing development and industrialization is felt, as older populations start to begin growing rather than dying out in the early adulthood. With countries in this stage, the resulting population pyramid shows a wide base for a still rising population and a slowly decreasing population as you go up in age, but still wider than that of the stages before. Those states who claim this stage are Mexico, India, Colombia, and South Africa, some of which could be referred to as newly industrialized and/or semi-peripheral. Subsequently, the fourth stage, the last that everyone can definitively agree exists, occurs when both the crude death rate and the crude birth rate are low, resulting in either a low increase rate or a country with zero population growth, due to both the birth and death rate being so low together that they equal each other. For this reason, the population pyramid correlating to this stage has more of a rounded shape, with the numbers of working class and children about the same for the length, meaning the amount of people is relatively the same, while the elderly have only a small bit less of the population number at the top because of advanced elderly care. The decrease is attributable to the further increase of development that brings with it better healthcare and more women within the workforce, making the birth rate decrease as women are allowed to pursue a career outside of the house. With more people participating in the workforce, the economy will also increase as a result. furthering the development and dominance over other earlier stage countries. As of now, countries within this stage are Argentina, Australia, Canada, China, Brazil, most of Europe, Singapore, South Korea, and the US. Though controversial, there is mention of a fifth stage, where the birth rates continue to shrink. They become less than the death rates, giving rein to a negative natural increase rate. Meaning that as time goes on, the population, rather than increasing, you will actually start to see a decline. As a result, for the population pyramid, you may see what some call a top heavy population pyramid, because the older population has more people within, as the fertile age people have less children. Effects of this can vary. One could be, like what Japan is facing, where the population is graying, meaning that there are more elderly people that need care than the working force can support. So they're starting to have to rely on guesswork, a foreign person who is allowed to live and work temporarily in a country. Other countries that could be thought of to be in this stage are Germany, Estonia, and Ukraine.
Alright, now you're probably thinking, okay, so now I know what the DTM is, but what is the ETM? The epidemiological transition model was created by Abda R. Omran, an epidemiologist who in 1971 defined the stages of the ETM to describe the causes of death in each stage of the DTM. There are 5 stages of the ETM. Omran observed that the stages of the ETM are based on the changes in patterns of mortality and morbidity as well as technological advancements. All countries in these stages correspond to those in the same stages of the demographic transition model.
The first stage of the ETM is the age of pestilence and famine, and is characterized by high or fluctuating mortality rates due to widespread famines, war, poor living conditions, and infectious diseases like the bubonic plague. Taking place in the 1300s to the 1900s, Thomas Malthus called these events natural checks. In this stage, there is also high crude birth rate because in poor living conditions, women had more children to increase the likelihood of a child surviving. Speaking of their poor living conditions, the infant mortality rate and total crude death rate was extremely high because of infectious diseases and parasites that come from unsanitary procedures and the lack of proper antibiotics or healthcare and medicine in general. Animal attacks were also more probable in this stage due to the lack of developed weaponry to protect themselves. Human attacks also happen more frequently because of the desire to expand territories and power. Also, an inadequacy of regulations and governance over people made it more likely for them to harm one another. Like the DTM, there are no countries in stage 1 of the ETM, but there are small communities that still operate at this stage. Stage 2, the age of receding pandemics, is distinguished by many factors including sanitation improvements, better control of major outbreaks of infectious diseases, as well as medical breakthroughs. Infectious diseases, such as cholera, declined because of safer access to water sources and basic sanitation. For example, disposal of waste, which was the main reason cholera spread rapidly. Malnutrition was a major reason for high crude death rates, but in this stage globally, civilization had more access to better nutrition, which is mainly access to supplements with necessary vitamins. Medicine played a big role in nutrition and combating sicknesses. With the creation of antibiotics in the 20th century, death rates continued to decrease. Countries in this stage include Afghanistan, Bolivia, Niger, Uganda, and Yemen. The third stage, the age of degenerative and man made diseases, is characterized by an aging population where there's an increase in degenerative diseases such as arthritis, Parkinson's, and Alzheimer's disease. Human created diseases, which are a cause of a change in diet in most cases, will result in higher cases of diabetes, obesity, and hypertension, also known as high blood pressure. These dietary changes and rise of problems lead to an increase in heart disease and heart attacks, which become the leading cause of death in 1921. An increase in alcoholism, drug use, and exposure to air pollution create a rise in global cancer rates. The fourth stage of delayed degenerative diseases, is characterized by declining age-specific mortality, resulting in a shift of non-communicable diseases to older ages. As the food industry increases, so does the rates of obesity with chronic diseases. Increased use of technology, such as electronic devices and dependency on these items, will reduce the time spent on physical activities, creating an increase in sedentary lifestyles. The fifth stage of reemergence of infectious and parasitic diseases, is characterized by the reemergence of diseases and an increase in crude death rate. Some experts say there are three reasons for this. The first is the evolution of microbes. Several infectious diseases have evolved and established resistance against antibiotics and medicine used today. The second is poverty. Even though most societies are developed, many areas still have homelessness and poverty. Diseases spread very quickly in these environments because of their unsanitary living conditions. The final reason is increased connections through advancements in air travel, trains, highways, and more. The world is more connected than ever before, and because of this, diseases are spreading throughout the world.
Whew, alright guys, that was a lot. It's time to digest. To sum it all up in a few words, the DTM and the ETM are linked through their stages and are both used to measure the level of development in a country by looking at their birth and death rates, as well as their causes of death to identify their places in the models. And now you know everything about the DTM and the ETM. Good luck on finals, and thank you all for joining us on another episode of